Break your day with Daybreak Nigeria on EKTV Channel 41, your agenda-setting program for the best of interviews without bias, sports, business news, weather report, newspaper highlights, and news as it breaks with balanced reportage. Watch Daybreak Nigeria. Daybreak Nigeria live on EKTV. Mondays through Fridays from 7:15 to 10 o'clock in the morning. EKTV Daybreak Nigeria, your agenda-setting program.
Yeah, welcome to the second segment of your program, Daybreak Nigeria. And on this segment, we want to take a look at the state of the nation. And in the studio this morning, we have former special advisor of public special assistant public affairs to the former president, Trevor Ambassador, former minister of aviation, Chief Femi Fani Kayode, a lawyer, a poet, and the chief of Ile-Ife. So you're welcome to the studio.
Morning to you.
Like I said earlier, that I'm not alone, that I will be joined by a co-anchor, person of Mr. Dele Babatunde. Together we'll take on this segment. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, to kick the ball rolling, before we move to the national issues, we want to discuss about your personality. Sometimes when there was a noise in the newspaper that you were at the Aso Rock to had a meeting with Mr. President, and people are saying maybe you have moved away from APC to PDP, but can you please use this forum to clear what really transpired and what is the situation of things now?
Well, the first thing is that I wouldn't say anything on this forum or anywhere else that's different to what I said at the time when I went to the villa. I really don't see anything that's wrong or extraordinary in an individual in this country or somebody that has served at the level that I've served in to go to the presidential villa to visit from time to time. There was not an outcry or speculation when General Buhari went to the villa to collect an award. There were not speculations and an outcry when our governors went to the villa recently, particularly our Southwest governors, most of whom are very close to me, to have a private meeting with Mr. President. They left the villa. They did not tell the world what they discussed there. That did not mean that they had crossed over to the PDP. Just yesterday, there was another meeting in the villa where a number of APC governors were there with other governors, including my good friend, the governor of the state. He did not leave the villa, or people didn't leave the villa assuming, or people didn't assume they had left the APC. Look, at the level that we are operating, it's important, right and proper that we interact with leaders of all shades of opinion from all sides in order to try to move the country forward. And I've said it over and over again, and I said it on that day at the villa, and in fact since that time, that I am still in the PDP. I'm still in the APC. I'm still in the APC. And if I choose to leave the APC, when I choose to do that, if I ever choose to do that, I would let people know, and I'd give my reasons why. I'm not one of these people that plays games or is somewhere, pretends to be somewhere and is somewhere else. I'm very straightforward. I'm very plain. I'm very honest about my views. And I'll always say what I believe at any time to anybody that I choose. At the age of 53, I think it's important to be able to do that, especially if you're aspiring to leadership and you count yourself as a leader. Now, I will not say here or anywhere else that there are not issues within the APC that we have to grapple with, just like any other party. And of course, there are divisions of opinion. And we're working on that. I have voiced out certain things which you're aware of, which I think speaks the mind of many, many people within the ranks of the APC in this country. Some concerns about the agenda I believe that some of our leaders within the party have. And I will continue to voice that, whether anybody likes it or not, because that's my right and duty to do as a leader. I do not belong to a cult. I belong to a political party. If I feel that things are not going right within that political party, I reserve the right to go elsewhere, and I will do so. But having said that, I haven't made that move. And I will, when I choose to make that move, I'll be the first to let the Nigerian people know. But as we speak today, I am within the ranks of the APC, and nothing has changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy you are trying to lay, should I say, the facts there.
Yeah.
Severally before now, you've always been described recently as a chieftain of the APC, and I think that you are still saying to us that this morning you are a chieftain of the APC. But it's more about verbal and non-verbal communication. I think a man of your status visiting the villa is no big deal to me.
Sure.
I mean, but there was some verbal and non-verbal communication you gave just post the meeting. And to be specific, you did make some reference to Christian candidature, etc., just at the post-villa meeting. I think there was some body language, there was some signposting.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Sure, I can. Like I said, I'm always open about such matters. As you know, I write a lot. I enjoy writing, and it's a way in which I feel it's appropriate to express myself, and I've been doing it for many years. This whole issue of same religion tickets, if you like, is something that has come to the fore over the last few months. And of course it came to the public realm over the last few weeks. And I made my contribution well before I went to the villa in an essay in which I spoke forcefully about the lack of wisdom in the APC presenting a Muslim ticket. And I said this simply because I'm fully aware of the fact that some within the ranks of the party believe passionately in that as a way of winning the 2015 election. And
but I did come to the public square.
It didn't need to come to the public square. First of all, it may not have been discussed as a national issue, but it's something that's being discussed openly and privately within the party. And as a matter of fact, in a number of fora, not even just within the party. And it's not even a party issue. It's a national issue. In a country which is a multi-religious country, a multi-ethnic country, a multicultural country, in my view, for anybody to come up with that kind of suggestion anywhere, either covertly or overtly, I believe, is not only the height of irresponsibility, it is also the way to disaster. And I think the right and proper thing for any party leader to do is to send the warning signals well before that course is walked upon. Like I said, I believe that in all the political parties in this country, whether it's PDP, APC, or APGA, or Labour, we really shouldn't be operating cults that operate within cloisters and in the darkness. We should be able to speak out, voice our opinions, send the relevant signals. Now, there's nothing I've said publicly on this issue that I have not said privately to virtually every key leader within the APC and outside of the APC.
Well, maybe to cover the time and scene. Like I said, if we'll just post that visit.
No. Like I said, the submissions came. I wrote an essay titled, I can't remember the exact, but something about Muslim. I have a problem. I always forget the titles of my essay, but I remember the content.
And very good titles, though. I enjoy your titles.
Thank you very much. But I wrote about the issue of Muslim ticket. It was a two-part essay, which I wrote, I think, about 2 weeks or so before. Now, before that time, there's been a lot of discourse, a lot of discussion. Senior members of our party spoke with me privately about the wisdom of such a course of action. I stood against it and I said, we're going to hit the rocks if we do that. And I, Femi Fani Kayode, will never be part of that. Simply because what will I tell those that share my faith if at the end of the day the party that I joined ends up presenting somebody that is not represented on the, or two people that are not represented on the ticket. And you know, ordinarily, in any advanced society, of course, these things really shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter to me whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. As a Yoruba man, we have Christians, Muslims, and even pagan worshippers within the same family. And really nobody cares. Religion is a personal issue. Okay. However, in this country, in this context, we're talking about moving our country forward, where you have an Islamist revolt in some parts of the country. In this day and age, most people in this country are very sensitive about this issue, and they regard it as being important to them. So if you go into an election and you're talking about a Christian ticket, or a northern ticket, or a southern ticket, or a Muslim ticket, you are heading for disaster. And once it is clear to some of us that we're moving in that direction, the right and proper thing to do as a leader of the party, and as a stakeholder of the party, and as somebody that joined the party before it was even formed and registered, I think I have every right to voice that opinion, and that's what I did. So issues of Villa came much later, and it was just a comment that I made.
Coincidence or thereabout?
In response to the question that, look, am I still in APC?
Okay.
And I'm saying that I said it then when I was at the Villa. I've said it since that time, and I'm saying it again today. I am still in the APC. However, if it is clear to me that we are not going to chart the right course, or if it is clear to me that we are operating not on an open basis, whereby we are acting like sensible individuals that are serious about winning elections, I reserve the right to retrace my steps, like any other individual does in this country. And I wouldn't begrudge anybody that. But as of now, you know where I am. The day I'm not there, I will say
those are more like basic conditions and conditionalities. Abstain or leave it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every leader must have those conditionalities. Nothing, you can't say I'll be somewhere till I die simply because I like the initials of the party. You have to be able to espouse the ideals, the vision, and the focus of the party. And you need to be able to work with people that have a common purpose with you. Now, I will tell you this much right now. The overwhelming majority of people within the APC, and I interact with virtually every APC leader, I've interacted with virtually every key leader in this country, even outside of the APC, within PDP and other parties, even Labour. I'm telling you today that most of them share my views on this. The problem is that many of them don't want to come out to speak, simply for in reasons of political expediency. I don't share those views. I will say anything I want to anybody I want at any time I want, and I will stand by my passion and my convictions, and that's what makes me useful. What you see is what you get, and I'll stand by what I believe in.
Yeah, what makes APC manifesto different from other political parties?
What, sorry?
Makes APC manifestos different from that of political party that must inform you joining the
Well, it's quite apart from the manifesto of that party, which was launched not too long ago, and of course you probably go talk to the publicity secretary of the party, Lai Mohammed, to go into detail about that, or indeed you talk to Olisa Metu to go into detail about that. So in terms of comparing manifesto, but I'm a great believer in ideology, and you have to understand that there are a lot of grey areas when it comes to this. For me personally, I am left of centre, and I've always been, much to the surprise of many, many people. I believe in the state being sensible and compassionate towards people. I believe in social welfare programs, some of which are being carried out in this state, in Ekiti State today. I believe that there has to be state intervention in certain respects. I am not a capitalist. I am not somebody that believes in the expediency or the usefulness of the Bretton Woods institutions and capital markets and so on and so forth. I believe that capitalism has to have a face of compassion. You have to look after the poor. You have to try to ensure that everybody feels part and parcel of a country and everybody benefits to a certain extent. And you need to cater for the weak and the deprived. That is my own ideological leading, a little bit left of center. Now, I find that there are a number of people within the APC that share that view, okay? There are some in the PDP too, but there are more in the APC that share that view. And that's why I found myself where I found myself, together with a number of other reasons. But in terms of ideology, in terms of outlook, that's where I stand. And I believe that the APC has that. PDP has a lot of people, or rather the government has a lot of people that I was involved in a government. I served a government that was very right-wing. You had people like the present Minister of Finance and others who were products of the World Bank, products of the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and so on and so forth, quite a number of them. Now, I get on very well with these people, but I share a slightly different worldview to them. Doesn't mean we can't work together tomorrow, but we just may disagree fundamentally on the way to move any country forward. I don't believe that you need to enslave a country and make a country into a debt-ridden state in order to be able to control what goes on, and then you now impose conditionalities that cripple the future of that country. And I think that is what you've raised, a very fundamental issue, and these are the sort of things we should be debating, not APC, PDP, but national issues and international issues that impact on our people.
Okay, ideology-wise, left of the center. You, should I say, cut your teeth minus the family background with NNC?
That's right. Yes, you've done your research.
Moved into PDP.
Yeah, sure.
Based on the choices that
NRC.
NNC, PRP, yes.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's Dagamon.
Right, yeah.
Those parties don't look too left of the center. There were choices that were right or right of the center.
Absolutely.
So why left of the center?
You're real students of political history. Well, let me tell you why. It's very simple. That was in I started politics in 1990. That's when I was national youth leader of the NNC, which is a very right-wing political party. Political association, because it was never registered. That's where all the right-wing guys were and all the big wigs, and I was a very young man at the time. And I had the privilege of being national youth leader of that party. That's where I cut my teeth. It was a right-wing party, you're right of center. Then, of course, President Babangida did not register any of those political parties. We now went to NRC. He registered two, or created
a little to the right,
a little to the right, a little to the left. At that time, being a very young man, a little bit impetuous, being a product of the conservative forces in this country, right-wing forces, and so on and so forth. Of course, I went a little right of center, but that was in 1991, and of course, that's when I worked with Chief Tommy Kimi, Alhaji Umar Shinkafi, and a number of others. But of course, everything changed for me post June 12th, 1993. In terms of my outlook to politics, in terms of my outlook to life, I spent time, interestingly enough, being properly educated at a Bible seminary for a couple of years, and which for me was the greatest education I ever had, even though I had been to universities, Cambridge, London, and all the rest of it throughout my life, the best schools from the age of 11 in the United Kingdom. But for me, the greatest education I ever had was those 2 years at the Bible seminary, where I learned about God and the Word of God. And for me, everything changed from that point. And I moved to the left, and I worked within Nadeco. I came back, and even within the PDP that I joined many years later, when I joined President Obasanjo's government, some of us were always left of center within, and we fought our corner even at cabinet meetings and so on and so forth. There were a number of us like that. Akin Oshutoku, who is from this land, from Ukemesi, he's a good friend of mine, El Rufai, Ribadu, a number of others. At that time, we were all together, and we fought from within. And believe me, most of us were a little bit left of center. We certainly did not share the views. Well, let me speak for myself. I didn't share the views of some of the right-wing capitalist conservatives that were within that government with us.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. Let's move a little bit forward. What would you say is the core essence of the Nigerian politician? And I'm saying this, you've got a lot of history behind you.
Yeah.
Your father was into politics. You've also, I'll give you some bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
You've got to some of the best colleges in London, etc. And now this is the year 2014. And here's an FFK trying to be in a progressive party. Should your party, should an FFK, should even be in dialogue over Christian, Northern, Southern? Are those signs of progressiveness?
No, it is a question of necessity.
Necessity.
It is not something that is tasteful, neither is it desirable. Left to this individual, we would have a country where religion really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, or shouldn't matter to me or to you, if our president or our vice president, are both Muslims or both Christians. In utopia, or in a perfect society, in an ideal society, it really shouldn't matter. And let me just say, for me personally, it really doesn't matter what your religious faith is, as long as you can perform. However, we are dealing with an electorate of 150 million people. A country in which, whether we like to admit it or not, religion is a factor. There are divisions within this country in terms of religion, especially with what has happened in the last 10 to 20 years in our country. Nobody can run away from that. We can pretend, and in pretending you lose an election. Or you can be sensible and accept the fact that, look, as unpleasant as it might appear, as retrograde as it might appear, as distasteful as it might appear, this is a factor that we must bring, we must address, and we must take cognizance of and do something about it. Now, one of my colleagues who was in cabinet with me before, that is Nasir El-Rufai, responded on his Facebook page to this issue and said, well, for him, religion really doesn't matter. But as far as I'm concerned, religion does matter if you want to win an election in this country. In our entire history, we have never had, other than June 12th, 1993, 21 years ago, a situation whereby in a democracy I'm talking about, whereby you have 2 Christians or 2 Muslims on one ticket. If you do that, you are showing the height of insensitivity to, for example, if you have a Muslim ticket, to the over 50% of Christian population in this country. If you have a Christian ticket, you are showing great offense to over the approximately 50% of Muslim people within this country. And I think this is something that we must run away from. If you have a plural society, a multi-religious society, you cannot run away from the fact that you must take religious sensitivities, into cognizance and on board. You must recognize the fact that a Christian will find it difficult to vote for a ticket that has a Muslim. Most Christians will find that difficult. Most Muslims also find it difficult to vote for a party that has a Christian ticket. This is an ugly fact we have to live with. We haven't got to utopia yet. So let's get real. Let's stop pretending in the typical Nigerian way, say it really doesn't matter. Let's get real and understand the electoral sensitivities of our country and what we're up against. Now, quite apart from that, we are faced with the greatest war that this country has ever fought since the Nigerian Civil War. The Nigerian Civil War was even better, if you can ever describe war as being better or not better. But the Civil War that we had was even better to a certain extent, because you knew who the enemy was and 2 sides were fighting. Both had completely different worldviews and knew what they wanted to do. You knew what you were fighting then. You either wanted to break off from Nigeria or you wanted to force others to stay in. Straightforward. You're either one side or the other. But what we're fighting today is an invisible enemy. An enemy that cannot be seen. You don't really know what he wants. All he's doing is killing our people, kidnapping our children, trying to impose an Islamist agenda, not a Muslim agenda, because I don't regard Islamists as Muslims. I regard them as Islamists. And of course, as I've written it, I've said it, they are the spawn of the devil. Now, I can say that and I can write that any day, any time, because that is the truth. These people want to change our worldview, change our nation, kill our people, rape our women, pillage all our resources, and drive us back to the 6th century BC. Now, this is unacceptable. I am of the view that today, what we need to do is join hands, join forces, whether you're in PDP, you're in APC, whether you're in government or outside of government, whatever your party, you're in APGA, Labour or whatever, we need to join forces and fight the enemy together. Because if we don't do that, we may not even have a 2015. We may not even get there as a democracy. The country may even break up. And I believe, by that time. So I believe that's the challenge of today. And again, in a typical Nigerian way, and I have to say that because that's the truth, we act as if nothing is happening. We act as if it really doesn't matter. And that amazes me. We've had 10,000 people that have been slaughtered in the last 3 years in this country. And I think that's cause for alarm and cause for concern. You go to America, 1 person is killed, it becomes a major issue. Here, 10,000 in the last 3 years. Now, I am saying that all of us have failed in this respect to be sensitive, not just government, not just the president, each and every one of us, opposition figures, people within, we have failed to accept the fact that we have a major crisis in this country. We're arguing and fighting ourselves about the most mundane and childish and irrelevant issues when we have a war on our doorstep. I live in the north. I've lived there for the last 10 years. Go to the northeast, and I've been there. It is unbelievable what is going on. They brought the war to Abuja once again. We need to join forces. We need to bury our differences. We need to work together. We need to move the country together. And if people are uncomfortable at the fact that, people from different sides of the political divide are talking in order to move the country together and fight this evil that seeks to overwhelm our people and take our land, if some people are upset by that, that is entirely their problem. I believe that as a statesman, as a leader, we need to work together, we need to rise above our differences and move this country forward.
Jan, you've been saying so much of what is going on at the conference, at the National Conference of Abuja. Do you want to agree with some people that says it's a time wasting and waste of resources?
Well, my views about it's okay to talk, and I've always believed in dialogue, and I've always believed in the utility and importance of a national conference. Okay. For me, however, I've always believed in a sovereign national conference, which I believe that is what we really need. But whatever the case, it's good that people are talking. And I sincerely hope that something good comes out of it. And you can see from some of the rhetoric that's coming out, some of the differences that we have as a people, as a nation. whether it's North, South, Christian, Muslim. I mean, even in terms of the prayers that are being carried out there, some people are complaining that there's a Muslim agenda. The thing is that it's okay to talk, but for me, the most important thing is to recognize the fact that we are presently involved in a war. 200 children, 200 girls were abducted the other day. And before then, many others have been abducted. Not too long ago, children had their throats slit in their schools. I mean, what type of country are we? This is something that should be on the front burner. This should be the main issue every day in the media, in our newspapers, on television. But it seems to me that it happens one day, a week later, everybody seems to forget. And that is my concern, that what will it take for us to rise up and accept the fact that, look, it's not about blaming the president. It's not about blaming the opposition figure. It's not about pointing fingers. Some have said that Khan are the ones behind Boko Haram, and that the president is the one behind Boko Haram, which I think is absurd. Some have said that some of those in opposition are the ones behind Boko Haram, and that they're the ones, which I think is equally absurd. What we need to do is understand, recognize the fact, please, Nigerian people, recognize the fact that there is an international dimension to this. I wrote this 3-4 years ago in an essay. Al-Qaeda is involved. The Taliban are involved. Al-Shabaab, which is the East African equivalent, are involved. Al-Qaeda in the North African Maghreb is involved. There's an international dimension. And of course, there are also some foreign powers that seem to take interest in such things happening in some parts of the world in order to feather their own nests. And I am looking particularly to the French and to the Cameroonians. I don't understand why it is that we have not reserved the right or exercised the right of hot pursuit into the Cameroons in order to capture, kill, or destroy the bases of Boko Haram or those that are hosting and supporting Boko Haram. This is a matter of international law. It's perfectly legitimate under international law. Yet the president of the Cameroons has consistently refused to allow us to do that. You need to ask why that is. And if Cameroon is behaving in this way, you know that the French are behind them. Now, these are the issues that we are faced with. The whole of the northeastern region of our country has been overwhelmed, literally. And that is the issue for me today. Now, quite apart from that, you have to understand, there's a local aspect to it as well. There are some people, and I'm going to say this, a lot of people don't like to hear the truth. This morning, they will hear the truth from me. There are some people within our country, specifically from the north, and who believe, not all, but some, who believe that it was right and proper for them to encourage this sort of division, this sort of carnage, this sort of killing, simply because they were not comfortable at the fact that you had a Christian southern president at the center. We saw it in the year 2000 when Sharia was introduced, when Obasanjo was president. I hadn't joined government then, but I remember arguing strongly at the time that Obasanjo should take a very firm stand against the imposition of criminal Sharia, that is, full Sharia, political Sharia, he called it. He said it would fizzle out. Of course, it didn't fizzle out. It's come back almost 11 years or so later in a much more virulent form. Once you give an inch to the Islamist philosophy or the Islamist agenda, it will continue and continue and continue to grow until you decide to crush it. It was crushed in virtually every other Muslim country in the world, including Indonesia, including Algeria, including Egypt. There are so many. I could go on and on and on. The only places that you have the establishment of an Islamic fundamentalist state in this country are in Iran and perhaps Saudi Arabia, one or two other places. Everywhere else, they crushed them, they fought war. Muslims were fighting Islamists, and they're doing it today in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. This is what we need to do. Now, I'm going back to the point. There are some northern leaders in this country who are quite comfortable, or were quite comfortable, with pushing this agenda, encouraging it and supporting it, simply because they felt that it was inappropriate to have a southern Christian person running the affairs of this country. And I think that people that believed in that agenda and supported that agenda are the ones that are now suffering the most as a consequence of it. What you have is a situation where it's got out of control. They didn't realize that they were riding a tiger. The tiger is now devouring them and seeks to devour every single one of us. And we need to do something about it. There are two forms of opposition in this country, if I may say so, just as a last point. There are some people that are legitimately concerned about some of the things that have been happening in this country over the last few years. and they voiced it out. But there are others that couldn't care less whether Goodluck Jonathan is doing well or not doing well, as long as he's from the wrong side of the country, in quotation marks, as long as he's not one of them, as long as he's not one of those that they describe themselves as being born to rule, as long as he doesn't share their religious faith and have their hidden agenda, as long as he has no intention of Islamizing the country and so on and so forth, they don't like him. And as a consequence of that, they will oppose him whether he's doing well or not. And we must recognize that. And this is some of the issues that I think we need to bring to the fore and speak against. The days where somebody is regarded as a second-class citizen simply because he's a Yoruba man, or he's a Christian, or he's a Ijaw man, or he's an Igbo man, or he's anything, even a Fulani man, he's a second-class citizen, or a Muslim or a Christian. Those days are gone, and they're gone forever, and we will never accept them again. As far as I'm concerned, if Nigeria is to remain as one country, let it be that every single Nigerian, whether he's Christian or Muslim, northern or southern, Hausa, Fulani, Igbo, whatever you are, we are all equal before God and before the law. That has to be the premise under which we will continue as one. If you don't have that, if that premise is removed, if that foundation is removed, then let Nigeria cease to exist.
There's this school of thought that the president is weak, that if he had been the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, would have taken a drastic step against these Boko Haram insurgents and what them. Do you want to agree with that?
Well, it's a question of style. I really would be interested to know how President Obasanjo would handle this situation we're in now. I can speak for myself. Okay. If I were president, and I would not say anything in a war situation, which we are in as far as I'm concerned, to in any way hamper the efforts of our security agencies and our soldiers that are on the war front fighting Boko Haram. And I will not, I've said all I've had to say about criticism and so on and so forth in the past, and what I've written is there for everybody to see in the past, but we're dealing with today. And what I've come to realize is that we need to encourage our president and our security agencies to do the very best that they can, but we must also support them in this struggle. It's not good enough to just criticize and criticize. We need to support them in this struggle, because if they fail, we fail. If they don't manage to do their job properly, they're going to cut the heads of every single one of us off. I live in Abuja, like I said, and just not too far from the SSS headquarters. What happened the other day? I witnessed the whole thing from beginning to my home is probably about 100 meters from the SSS headquarters. I saw what happened. I live in Abuja. What happened in Yaya the other day, which is a big motor park in an area there, the whole world heard about it, where we had so many of our people killed there. These are my people, because I live in Abuja, and I've lived there for the last 10 years. And these people were slaughtered like flies. It hurts every single one of us. And it's time for us to begin to join forces and not assign blame all the time, but say, okay, look, fine, what are we going to do? This shouldn't be an election issue. It should be a war effort today, not an election issue for 2015. And that is why I think it's important we should all come together. I was very pleased with the contributions of General Buhari the other day, where he also rose above party politics and said, look, it's time for us to join forces and fight Boko Haram. And he condemned Boko Haram in very strong terms. Long overdue, and I'm happy that he's done it. And I wish more of our leaders would take that position. Any leader in this country, or anybody that claims to be a leader, that refuses to condemn Boko Haram, refuses to stand against them publicly, not under their beds, not in the privacy of their homes, not saying, oh gosh, I don't want to be a target. Forget about that. God is the one that protects each and every one of us. You need to be able to come out and stand for the people at the time that it's the most important, and that time is now.
Okay. I'm happy we are underscoring the insecurity thing. That's just the butt of your last, one of your last articles. Yeah. And you did talk a lot of unintelligent rubbish moving around the country, okay? I do agree with that to a large extent.
What was that, sorry?
You said there was a lot of unintelligent rubbish.
I remember using those words.
Unintelligent rubbish being said.
Yeah, okay, sure, yes.
About people making commentaries,
right,
and a lot of disinformation.
That's right, you're right.
As it were. Really good. Just yesterday, the Security Council met. Yeah. And I think from this morning, from what I heard, there was still an over-localization of the issue. You had things like it was unemployment, holistic things. Will that be unintelligent rubbish, sir?
Well, I don't know who said that.
Well, the council said it.
But what I will say is that anybody that thinks that Boko Haram is a product of unemployment, which is something interesting enough that my friend Sanusi Lamido said about 2 years or about a year or so ago in an essay that he wrote.
In other words, unemployment, poverty, etc. And all
Look, listen. We have seen Islamists in Saudi Arabia. Not even the government. We've seen Islamic. The commander-in-chief of all Islamists in the history of man, Osama bin Laden, was a very wealthy man, and those that supported him were very wealthy people. We've had Islamists in very, very wealthy countries, in very, very poor countries that are doing well, countries that are not doing well. It's an ideological struggle. It's a question of worldview. It's a question of jihad. That is the position or the view that we need to impose strict Sharia law and Islamist values on every society and every country in the world. The view that Western education and everything Western is evil and wrong. The view that the secularity of the state has no place in any civilized society. That if you're a Muslim, then you must impose your values, you must apply 6th century Sharia law, you must cut off limbs, you must stone women, you must not allow women to watch television, you must not allow women to have medical attention, you must not allow women to go to school, you must marry girls at the age of 9 or even 6, and so on and so forth. That is the philosophy behind this. It's nothing to do with unemployment. Unemployment may fuel it. Unemployment may provide foot soldiers. Yes. And of course, it does help if we get the economy right. But let's be very clear about this. This is a battle for the very soul of our nation. It's not about somebody being so hungry that he suddenly gets up and decides that he's going to start slaughtering babies, abducting children. No, look at what happened in Algeria. 150,000 people were slaughtered during the war between the government in that country, and it was a military government that started the fight. It was the military that took the fight in the name of secularism, and they were all Muslims, by the way, against the Islamist forces who believed in the imposition of an Islamic fundamentalist state. You look at the same thing in Turkey, which is the best example, which I think I alluded to in the essay.
Yes.
Kemal Atatürk established a modern-day secular Muslim state. One of the greatest countries with the strongest economies in the world. Nobody was complaining about unemployment at the time. And what he did was that he recognized the fact that if he didn't do this, that everything would fail in Turkey. And he succeeded. But you know how he did it? A lot of people don't like to know the success behind Turkey. Well, let's talk about it this morning. Had it not been for the fact that Kemal Atatürk, who was an army general at the time, before he became head of state, and who the country was named after as a consequence of all his efforts, had it not been for the fact that he slaughtered 1 million plus Islamists in his country, and he's a Muslim. He slaughtered 1 million of these people that believed in the 6th century Sharia, that believed in the imposition of a fundamental. He slaughtered 1 million of them. That was the foundation under which Turkey, modern day Turkey, was built. Without that, it would never have happened. The same thing is being fought in Afghanistan today. And of course the Taliban government was kicked out. The same thing is being fought in Pakistan today. The same thing was fought in India some time back. The secular state, you know, there's no... I mean, Indonesia, the largest Muslim country, they fought it as well. Malaysia fought it. The Philippines fought it. Yes. Everybody, Egypt has fought it for many, and they're still fighting it today. You know, Somalia is fighting it today. We see traces of it in Central African Republic today. And we've seen it in Mali. The most important thing to appreciate is this, that we need to understand the underlying philosophy of these people. It is not a question of being hungry or unemployment or not being satisfied. It is because people believe, some people have been indoctrinated by what I call the Wahhabi Salafist doctrine, which is that jihad must be spread by force and you must create an Islamic fundamentalist state. And as long as we refuse to recognize and accept that, this thing will continue to spread and they will have more and more converts.
Thank you again. Let's come back to be on insecurity, and then just to take a cue from you, coming back home. Okay. There are pockets of insecurity all over the country.
Yes.
Armed robbery, criminal gangs, vandalization gangs, etc., kidnapping, coming nearer home like my colleague was trying to say, essentially a large army of thugs available to all parties.
Yeah.
It seems the country itself is over-militarized, non-formal, formal. What do we do about that?
Well, first of all, security is a challenge for each and every one of us.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. there is insecurity virtually everywhere in the country today. But what we need to do, first of all, is, like you said earlier, if it's just insecurity we're talking about, if it's just question of armies of people being employed by politicians to do bad things or armed robbers, that is purely a question of security. Get the economy right, ensure that people are employed, gainfully employed, provide hope for the people. And once you do that, people will begin to do things, because look, without trying to justify any of these hideous acts, the truth of the matter is this, that look, it's a pretty dim future that most of our people, look, we have an 80% graduate unemployment in our country today. It's tragic, that's the fact, that's the truth, okay? And you have a very high unemployment among, and those are amongst the graduates. Now, talking about the general population, you have a very, very high, I think it's 51% or something like that, 2 in 1 unemployed. Where you have a situation like that is caused by unemployment, lack of hope, despair, and so on. And so people begin to do the most hideous things in order to survive. And it's something that we need to get the economy right. We need to help people, to empower them, to strengthen, and give them hope for a future. And they will stop doing crazy things like that. That's a completely different thing to those that believe that, look, there is no hope in any secular state. There is no hope in having any Christians in the country. There's no hope in having even moderate Muslims, that you must have an Islamic fundamentalist state. It's a completely different thing. The first, or the latter, needs to be understood and needs to be fought with power, with strength, with strong leadership, and with courage, and with everybody recognizing that this is the evil we're up against. The latter needs to be fought with sensitive, compassionate policies that will empower the people and give them hope for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Election is around the corner in Ekiti State and the nation, and your political party is in charge of the southwest state, actually Ekiti and Osun State. But the Kulu party is trying to employ various techniques in taking over the southwest. Do you think that's happening?
Well, the election has just started, campaigns have just started, and so on and so forth. What I will say to you is that I believe in looking at what is on the ground and what is going on, particularly in Ekiti State, and I've been here a number of times now. The governor, John Kayode Fayemi, is a very good friend of mine. We've been together for many, many years. I remember the days of the Nadeko struggle, the role he played, the honorable role he played. And this is a man of letters, he's an educated man. He's a profoundly good man. And, whatever anybody may say, this is a man that has done an incredible job in Ekiti State. And he's doing a great job. And as far as I'm concerned, he should be allowed to continue. I support him wholeheartedly, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here. In terms of anybody wanting to come and impose their will, and so I think we're past that stage now. We must be extremely careful about trying to rig and so on and so forth. If the people of this state, and I believe that they will, accept the fact and recognize the fact that they have a governor that's done an exceptionally good job, a governor that is recognized not just nationally but internationally, that is respected. If they can just recognize that and accept the fact that he has done so many wonderful things in this state, I have no fear about the possibility of him not getting a second mandate. And I believe that he should get a second mandate. And I think it will be very difficult for anybody to come and rig or push him out or do the sort of things you alluded to just now in Ekiti State. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that as long as the people recognize the fact, and I believe they have, that he's done a good job, that he'll get a second mandate. And I hope he does.
I think where Ike is coming from, that there seems to be, there is a scent of a national agenda interference into Ekiti and Osun, your state. And I think the belief is this: go into these two states as PDP or as a national party. It's a school of thought.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were advising, like you had these are the type of things I would advise. Go into these strongholds of APC, not necessarily will erode, and let's show dismiss the myth of an APC stronghold in them. Are you seeing that?
Well, I would say that if that is the case, then it's a very, very, very grave error. We cannot go back to the politics of trying to erode people's base by illegal and illegitimate means. The consequences of such a course of action would not be pleasant for any of us, and we need to move away from that. it's a very delicate balance that we're walking right now in terms of national cohesion. I believe that it's time for us, I'm sorry to go back to, for us to come together rather than to divide ourselves along religious, political, or regional lines. But in doing so, one also has to appeal to all parties, the PDP included, even elements within the APC too, that we need to reach out to one another in fraternity and play the game according to the rules. Any attempt to in any way deny the people their mandate, or rather to nullify a legitimate mandate, or to deny the people their rights in terms of their votes and so on and so forth, will result in disaster. Disaster for every single one of us. And I would counsel all parties, particularly those that feel that they can use force to effect their purpose, to think twice about it. It's the will of the people, particularly the Yoruba people. I'm sorry to go on about this. The will of the Yoruba people. You see, look, I'm a Yoruba nationalist, and I have absolutely no apology for anybody for saying so. I'm a Yoruba nationalist. And whatever is in the interest of the people, the 50 million Yoruba people in this country, is what I will fight for. Why? Because I believe that Nigeria is basically a country that is based, that is made up of various ethnic nationalities, each of which is trying to get the best for his own at the center, but it must be on the basis of equality. So I'm a Yoruba man, I'm a Yoruba nationalist. And I would not want to see the kind of things that we saw, that we witnessed in the past many years ago, in 1966, in 1983, and in 1993, to come back to haunt us again in 2014. We've moved past all that. Now, whether you're a PDP man, you're an APC man, it really doesn't matter. You're a Yoruba man. You're a Yoruba woman. Let's do what's best for our people. Let's allow the will of our people to prevail. Let's recognize good governance. Let's accept good leaders. Let's stop rejecting good leaders and bring on bad leaders that really don't know. You don't know their background. You don't know where they're from. You don't know what school they went to. Stop all this. Let's bring in people that are innovative and can perform and can better the lives of our people. And if you're talking about record, if you're talking about performance, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen what's been going on in Ekiti State, and I have nothing but admiration and immense respect for the governor of the state, who will always be a friend of mine, and I never ever desert my friends, and I never leave my friends no matter what. Yes.
Okay, so this morning, therefore, JKF has your unqualified endorsement.
Absolutely.
Are you ready to throw in any endorsement for Osun State yet?
Well, I've told you which party I belong to.
I know your endorsement for please, FFK. I know your endorsement. I would like to see your endorsement for John Kayode Femi as going beyond the politics.
Yes.
We've seen elsewhere where you may be in another party and yet endorse a candidate in another party. I'm just asking you, are you, as at this moment, outside being APC, part of APC, ready to throw in an unqualified endorsement in Osun State?
But Aregbesola is my personal friend and he's my governor. Absolutely. Okay. No, you see, like I said earlier, let me get this very clear. I believe in individuals.
Good.
I believe in performers. I believe in people that can make a difference. I believe in that. First, for the sake of our people, the Yoruba people of the Southwest, I believe in the best. And I believe that if you perform, you should be allowed to come back. I also am a party man. But I've told you, the minute I decide I will no longer be in APC, if it ever comes, I will say so. I haven't got to that point yet. I may never get to that point, and I might do so tomorrow. That is purely my own decision. And if I'm going to do that, I will go to all those that I consider to be my friends and tell them what my position is. But in terms of elections, I am looking to the individual. And I'm saying to you that Fayemi has done an excellent job. And I've been here a number of times. I'm not basing this thing on sentiment. I'm not basing this thing on even friendship, because you can have friends that just don't know what they're doing. Right. And of course, you'd have to tell them you don't know what you're doing. In this case, it gives me immense pleasure to say this man has done an exceedingly good job. And I cannot deny that. And I believe that he has done enough to win a second mandate in order to better the lives of the people. And it's as simple as that. I have friends on all sides here, by the way. Fayose is my good friend. We, as you know, we were in the same party. We were in the same government. Well, rather, I was at the federal level. He was the governor of the state. And of course, Iola Omishore in Osun State is my kinsman. He's an Ife man. and we're brothers. We grew up together. So I have friends on all sides in this electoral. But that's how it should be in politics in any civilized society. You can have friends on all sides, but you can make your choices, and nobody should blame you for your choices. You still remain friends. I have some friends in the PDP. Some of my closest friends are PDP ministers today, Obanikoro and so many others. But the issue is that let's have the best for our people, and let us do the best. What I will not do, and I want to go back to this, is to be in a party and then it is assumed that I do not have the right to voice my views about anything at any time about anybody. That is not a political party. That is a cult. And I don't belong to cults. I've never belonged to one, and God forbid I should ever belong to one. If it is that the APC does not provide a generational change, number one. If it is that the APC is not in a position to say, look, we're going to balance the ticket when it comes to the presidential election. If it is that the APC resists dissent and resist discussion and dialogue, even public discussion and dialogue about fundamental issues. And if it is that I believe that some leaders in the APC are intolerant of dissenting opinions, then of course I will review my position and I'll take a stand then. When I get there, if I get there, I will say so, and I will still remain friends with all those that are my friends.
Running short of time, there's no doubt about that. Always have been excited to have you on and on and on. I can't wait to have you back.
I'll be delighted.
There was something you mentioned at the very beginning of this interview, and I'll just give you 1, 2, 3 minutes of that. It's going to shock everybody. The Bible education you have.
Okay, yes.
Just tell us about 2 minutes. Recommend it.
Oh, well, that
2 minutes.
Like I said earlier, that's for me. You cannot even begin to understand or know the essence of life until you are familiar with the word of God, which is the Bible. These are the words of life, the words from the Messiah himself, and also the words that were inspired by the Holy Spirit over the ages. It's the only book that teaches you where we're coming from, tells you about where we are and where we're going. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody that does not know or understand the provisions of the Word of God, that is the Holy Bible, is nothing more than intellectual barbarian. We need to get it clear that secular education is one thing, and it's good and it's right.
And you have the cream of it.
Yeah, indeed. But the essence of life, true and real education, resides only in knowing the Word of God, studying the Word of God, understanding the nature of God, and understanding the fact that without God we are nothing. And that's what I learned in Bible seminary.
Yeah, we would have loved to continue with the program, but time is not our friend on this. We have to draw a curtain on this segment of the program. For the past 1 hour or thereabout, we'll be talking with the former Special Assistant Public Affairs to President Olusegun Obasanjo, one-time Minister of Culture and Tourism, former Minister of Aviation, a lawyer, a poet, and a writer. Chief, we're happy to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much.
I mean, you got to give them. I always enjoyed listening his full name. Adewumi Abdul Latif Fani Kayode.
Thank you very much.
Femi Fani Kayode.
Thank you very much.
God FFK.
Thank you.
To believe when next we invite you on this program, you're glad to honor our invitation.
Thanks for the pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
We are very glad. At least you'll be able to delve so much on so many issues, the national issues and
it's
the
always
local
a pleasure
issues.
coming here.
So viewers, on this, we want to draw a curtain on this segment of Daybreak Nigeria. Join up another edition on Monday. And then have a nice weekend.
Break your day with Daybreak Nigeria on EKTV Channel 41, your agenda-setting program for the best of interviews without bias, sports, business news, weather report, newspaper highlights, and news as it breaks with balanced reportage. Break your day with Daybreak Nigeria on EKTV Channel 41, your agenda-setting program for the best of interviews without bias, sports,